Greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Want to remind everybody, hit that like, share, and subscribe button. There is a PayPal link down there for anybody who wants to share some love. Always appreciated. Make sure you use friends and family, of course. And the StreamYard link is down there for anybody who wants to join the panel. Tonight, we're continuing on with last night's discussion about education, indoctrination, and the atrocities it leads to. And so tonight we're going to talk about those atrocities that stem from that indoctrination. And if you're present or watched last night's video, you will know that I'm talking about Hitler's willing executioners. The atrocities that happened during World War II were a progress from the indoctrination that stemmed from the indoctrination from decades earlier upon the German people. Today, this same process is still going on. We haven't learned from history because nobody wants to take a look at the reality of it and see the education that's provided by the public governments, no matter what government it is an indoctrination system for control through compliance and conformity. So tonight, I'm going to continue on. And like I said, the StreamYard link is down there. And I'm going to continue on to explain the correlation of Hitler's willing executioners and how the slow, gradual desensitization of population to violence leads to their acceptance of the said violence, even on their own family members. How this is important to the false patriarch that perpetrates it, and the separation of church and state, which will be tomorrow night's stream. And this is a profound and complex reality that connects themes from Hitler's willing executioners, a book by Daniel Jonah Goldhagen about the mechanisms of mass control, indoctrination, and the cultivation of compliance through these desensitization ideologies. So the core thesis of Daniel Jonah Goldhagen's book, Hitler's Willing Executioners, argues that ordinary Germans were not simply just following orders during the Holocaust, but many were enthusiastic, even driven participants in the genocide of Jews. And his eliminationist anti-Semitism posits that deep-rooted cultural and religious prejudice had normalized hatred. And I think that's what we see today. I think we see a normalization of hatred where it's okay to hate each other. And I don't think this is something that we really want to instill in our children, particularly in a Christian society where we are supposedly supposed to be bringing our children up in the ways of the Lord, that says, owe no man anything but to love one another, for to love one another is to fulfill the law. Greetings, Dino. How you doing tonight? Good to have you on board again. How you been?
Doing okay, brother. Plugging away.
Yeah, it's about the best we can do sometimes.
That is indeed true. I just recently saw something today that had me kind of going nuts. That's right in line with what you're talking about. And it was this news story that came across my Facebook page from an area that I used to live in. And it was talking about how there was a, what did they call it? They call it like a desert of childcare desert. Like there wasn't enough childcare for all these children, and the whole point was this: is we gotta have more childcare for these children to get them into our schools so they're ready for school, and it's better for. And it's nothing at all about keeping your children at home. It's all about this idea you've got to push them out to somebody else to raise your children, and it's just like and it's talking about how it's like $1,100 to $1,600 a month for childcare. So you'd have to work a really good job to even to maintain that. You know what I mean? So the whole thing is just nuts. But it's this whole indoctrination of letting people believe this is like the only way. You know, and that
it's a organization of the family unit. It's a dispersal of the responsibilities, public gateways that makes it comfortable and convenient for parents so they can go out and seek those high-paying jobs to be even better little slaves to this false patriarch. I see it all the time. People are chasing a bag thinking that's what it's about. It's pathetic.
Well, that's what they want you to think, because then that puts you in their commerce game, and that's the bag. That's the only bag out there to chase is Federal Reserve notes. So
Yep.
that's the argument I'm trying to make with Social Security. It's like, if the labor of a human being is not an article of commerce, what are you people talking about by saying I have to work or that I don't qualify for these benefits? You call me a beneficiary, but according to your legal definition of beneficiary, that's somebody who's receiving benefits. And you're not giving them to me. So what, you know what I mean? This is part of the argument. A bunch of trustees telling me I can't have my benefits. Are you effing crazy?
Well, that's why, and you've heard me say it many times in Lawful Living, you know, it's particularly profound to me that this is a public service, which is a public trust. So where are all of the beneficiaries? If everybody's considered to be a trustee, then what the hell is a trust if there's no beneficiaries?
Well, I specifically asked the administrative law judge in the last, because I'm jumping through their hoops now to try to get my money back, because obviously they don't want to recognize the fraud. But this is getting me closer to the courts, where at some point they're not going to be able to argue that they can go forward with the fraud, and that's going to be part of my argument. Look, either acknowledge the fraud and give me my money back, or acknowledge the disability and start paying me monthly. I don't care how it comes. I just need it back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous that you would keep, you know, and I asked her, I specifically said, well, don't you have a fiduciary duty to me? And she said, no, I don't have any fiduciary duty to you. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So I got to bring that up. I mean, at the next level, like, who's this woman?
And that's, and that goes to their competency. And this is why I mentioned their competencies and their morals and ethics, because the constitutions, both state and federal, state that the sovereignty rests in the people. And that is why the Constitution exists, because it creates a foundation, an absolute objective foundation to the fact that the people in the government service are, in fact, public service is a public trust, and therefore are trustees and do have, in fact, a fiduciary duty, not to the record or anything, but to the people. And even in their records, they're not placing the morals and ethics to make sure the record has integrity, because they're just doing their jobs just like Hitler's willing executioners. That's somebody else's job.
And they're insane when they're doing their jobs. I mean, the woman fell over backwards saying I couldn't have, for instance, Robin couldn't be in the room with me while we were having this meeting because my privacy was at stake. And then in almost the exact same breath, it's like, well, don't you want to get a lawyer? Oh, so I could tell my private shit to somebody else? Are you fucking nuts?
Exactly. Exactly. See, they think that Miranda rights, you have the right to an attorney, is all the be end all. And it's not, because you're not using the correct term. You do not have, according to the Sixth Amendment, a right to an attorney. You have a right to seek the assistance of counsel. And that is unlimited. It does not say you are limited to seeking the counsel of an attorney. It says you have the right to seek counsel.
I go even further, and I would accuse these people of doing barratry. I mean, that's what everybody you hear from or you talk to, even if you look online, they say, "Oh yeah, you do much better with your Social Security when you have a lawyer, you know, arguing for you," because that's, you know, they want to keep their system going. And so I really think that they're looking down on me because I don't have a lawyer. Why do I need a lawyer to talk about? Why do I got to share my secret with somebody else, my life with somebody else, you know? And then you make a big deal about the people I live with who are testifying on my behalf. What? You know, it's just the silliest stuff. And then near the end, she said she had to make sure it was all fair. And I didn't get to jump on that, but I'm thinking afterwards, like, fair to whom? It was money I put in. I want it back. What? There's no fair here, lady. You know, what the hell?
Yeah, we're not going to be fair when we take it, but we got to be fair when we give it back, so we don't make any mistakes in who we give it back to.
And the news stories are full of these millions and billions of dollars that they're getting back because they're finding all this fraud in this stuff. You know, they've been given to benefits to people who are over 120 or 50 years old, whatever. It's like, yeah, insane.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm going over this, because people in these modern days, we've let so much slip in the past decades that we really don't see ourselves as Hitler's willing executioners. But I assure you, that is exactly what we are slowly turning into. And it's these things that happen only because of good men not standing up. And again, if we have a average reading comprehension of 8th grade across the Americas, I'm professing that we don't have such a great American nation, and that we are, in fact, stupid, hateful, and very derogatory and pejorative, and therefore will not last. If the people don't recognize the republic, then how can they keep it? And that comes down to that education again, which is what we're going to be talking about tomorrow again in the final part about, like I said, you have the right to seek the assistance of counsel. And that counsel is an immutable promise, sworn unto an oath by himself, because there was no one else to take it, was God's promise to immutable promise to seek his counsel. In studying to shew yourself approved unto God, not needing to be ashamed, so you can rightly divide the word of truth. And that's the basic, simple thing about Hosea 4:6. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. They're seeking the knowledge in the wrong. They keep going to the attorneys. They keep going to the state. They keep going to the teachers. They keep going to the church. These are the wrong places to go, folks. The scripture, in your Christian scriptures, stay to seek within yourself the kingdom of God. And here you are looking all around. It's pathetic.
Well, what's even more pathetic is I wish I was ignorant again, because then you see all this stupid stuff. I'm reading their Social Security manual, and just like you had mentioned before, it says a U.S. birth certificate. What the hell is that? I don't have one of those. Mine was issued by the state. And so, yep. But that's what they got in their list. And then they down below, they gloss over, other forms of ID or state ID. But I've even seen on the wall, when you go in there, they don't accept certain forms of ID, but you get the forms of ID they accept are the ones you get with the forms they don't accept. So it's kind of like, it's just the same damn thing. And so if I didn't have all this knowledge, if I didn't realize and see this nonsense everywhere I look now, I mean, it makes life really hard, because you're swimming in a sea of stupidity. And even if you do stand up to this, the people who might be on your jury are too indoctrinated to even understand what that looks like. And so they'll call it something else.
Right. When the court requires you to prove U.S. citizenship or state residency, again, that's stating that you are in dual citizenship of a corporate capacity. So when they ask you to show that ID at the courthouse to be on a jury, that's telling you that's a commercial operation. You just presented a commercial license. That's a commercial operation. That's an Article 1 corporate court, administrative only. No other way about it. None.
Even if it's not that, when you see what they filled out, even if they didn't present anything like you say, they filled out that they're U.S. citizens. And so you can easily say, this is not my peers. I'm not one of those.
Yeah, I am not a United States citizen, and I am not a resident. You would have to be able to find people that would be willing to admit that they are not a resident and they are not a United States citizen in order to conform to the idea that they would be one of my peers. To presume that they are my peer because they live in the same land does not mean so, period. So let me continue on a little bit about this normalization of people through these socializations of ideologies and cultures that turn them into perpetrators along with that false patriarch, the bootlickers, the ones that follow the blue line or back the blue until it happens to you. You know, these are the people, those are the same kind of peoples as the German people back in the day during World War II. And when World War II was over, a large portion of the German population was exiled, was booted out of their own country. And so many of them came to America. And that's what my lineage is. That's why I hate this so much. I have to pay for my father's sins, my grandfather's sins, my great-grandfather's sins. Those are the people that were involved in this and already were indoctrinated. And I'm going to tell you that once they moved to America, 13 brothers and sisters on my dad's side, 7 brothers and sisters on my mom's side, they kowtowed to the American government and didn't speak up when the American government came in and destroyed my family. That's how indoctrinated they become, that they will carry their indoctrination into other countries, not learning from their own experience, and just let it continue. How does this desensitization happen? Through violence and moral collapse? Well, his book reveals how societies can be gradually desensitized through normalization and incremental shifts. And this process is not unique to the Nazi Germany. It's history repeating itself over and over again, and people just don't see it. And it's constant propaganda, repetition of fear-based us versus them narratives that condition the public. That hatred, that institution of hatred. Hey, they're better than you, or you're better than them. Look at these details. That's all false teachings, every last bit of it. The institutional participation is to the police, teachers, and bureaucrats that normalize inhumane policies. CPS, number 1 on the list. CPS, number 1 on the list. Child Protective Services will get their nose in the business of families, no matter what the incident is. I just ran across a story yesterday where somebody was asserting their Second Amendment right out in public with camera and guns, weapons. The police confronted him. There wasn't any big issue. He was asserting his rights. He didn't get arrested, but they called CPS to go check on the children. So CPS started harassing him simply because he was invoking his First and Second Amendment rights to freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and freely carrying and bearing arms. And somehow that's a danger. Now, if you've got a gentleman that is enforcing those rights and you think it's a danger, if you're one of those bootlickers that thinks it's okay to give up your Second Amendment right, if it saves the life of one person, you can go ahead and give up your right. But to sit there and vote in a system to deny somebody else's rights, that is insanity. And it's the social conformity of fear of isolation or punishment that leads people to normalize inhumane policies. See, they're going to back the blue because they're comfortable in their isolation of sitting on that couch, watching the boob tube and watching somebody else's dramatic, comedic, heroic, murderous, mysterious life, because theirs is so exciting. They have nothing better to do than to sit there and suck down the poisonous drinks and eat the processed foods while they're doing that. And then when they hear the lights and sirens, they peek their head out and look out. Oh my, they're arresting somebody down the street, a couple blocks down. They don't pay any mind to it. They go right back to watching their boob tube. The next night, same thing. They look out the lights and sirens and they're down the street, the other end of the block. The next night, same thing. They're across the street. The next night, they're at the neighbors. When do you think they're going to come to your door? Do you think you're special? I know Dean doesn't think he's special, do you?
Well, that depends on in what regard you're talking. No, not in that way. I mean, but special in other ways. So, I mean, I don't know.
Well, and I've seen real quick here, Dean. I've told people before, and I should have said it when you came in again tonight. I think Dean is one of the lions of the house of Judah. He has no fear about speaking out, uses common sense, reason, and logic, and he says it bluntly, and I love that in a man. Appreciate you, Dean.
Appreciate you too, brother. Thank you.
So anyway, the shifting of the moral benchmarks is when these atrocities become true and become routine and normalized and it's no longer shocking. Over time, violence becomes not only acceptable, but morally justified, even against one's own friends, neighbors, and family. We use this justification system that they shouldn't have done that. They knew better. No, you don't. All you're doing is following everybody else like a bunch of sheep. And the relevance to authoritarianism and the false patriarch is in the symbolic or archetypal terms. The false patriarch represents an authoritarian power that just doesn't exist. Claiming moral and divine authority. Bullshit. You can't even, like Dean explained, can't even stick to the morals of doing what's right and just first, and then have to wait until you fuck up so bad and won't admit your own mistakes and have to slow down and say, wait a minute, we got to do this and be fair about it, make sure we're doing everything right. You should have been making sure you were doing everything right beforehand. This is the part that just boggles my mind. People are so willing to just do their job until it bites them in the ass. And then they want to cry, well, that ain't fair. I didn't know. You should have known. You should have known. Instead, you keep using this excuse that somebody else has authority over me. Somebody else told me I could do it. No, they didn't. That was your misconception of your job duties. Enforcing rigid order, hierarchy, and submission. That's what you fall to in this employment system. You believe, again, chasing the bag, that in order to chase that bag, you have to fall to this hierarchy and submit so you can climb that ladder of the hierarchy. That's not how you're supposed to ascend, okay? Disguising cruelty as duty, tradition, or divine will. See, this is the mockery of the public trials that we see so much today. See, today we see this public trial on television and the big news media. Is the rest of the world, are all of those people peers? No, they're not. It's a jury before your peers, not the entire world. And that's the part that's making everything so desensitized, because everybody gets to see what every other government does to all of their criminals or victims, however you want to look at it. And it conflates everything as the same, and it's not. Each culture has their own guidelines. Each culture uses a certain logic and reason, and that's what we're getting away from. We're going away from the oral histories of what was heartfelt and kept stored in there through logic, reason, and strong familial bonds to our forefathers and the spirits in the sky, as they call them, things like that. Today, we're so embedded in this language that is written down that we believe the words in the paper are truer than everything else in life, and that's false. The false patriarchal system uses the education, media, and religion to legitimize violence through that very indoctrination. They want you to use these devices. They want you to give your children these devices so they can flip through them and see all this stuff. They want your children to be peers of the world in that sense. They want your children to be misguided by these false patriarchs. They don't want you teaching your children the ways of the Lord, because then they might rise up against the government, realizing it's a false patriarch. Dismantles empathy by turning people against each other, splintering the family, community, and solidarity. And I am absolute evidence of that. Absolute evidence. I have no pity whatsoever for any of my family members, none of them. All of them that dismissed me and disregarded me as part of the family. They're the ones that have been duped. Let the fools that be fooled be fooled. And I have no empathy for them. My parents are in their 80s, and they still believe, as far as I know, that the police are their authority. May God save them, because he's the only one that can. See, the false patriarch thrives on this division, fear, and obedience. They'd rather have you paying attention and bowing down to them than your own mom and dad. Comes out and it ends up desensitizing entire populations through the continuous conditioning of hierarchical educational and religious institutions. Become willing agents of that repression, even against their loved ones. When you come raised up in these public education systems, indoctrinated into the chasing the bag, and that becomes your life, and you want a bigger bag so you get a better education, you're not doing anything but indoctrinating yourself even deeper into that cognitive dissonance. You're thriving more and more to retire early so you can sit at home and watch that boob tube. This is why oppressive regimes target youth early to fracture intergenerational trust and implant ideology deeper than familial or moral bonds. This is why I see nobody growing up with morals. They're not being taught morals. They're being told that they should just know right from wrong. And most of you should. But in it, the indoctrination, people sit there and think about all of this shit and they think, well, no, the system's got to be right. I can't be confused about it. I don't care if there's beating the shit out of that. I don't care if they're standing on that guy's neck. He did something wrong. Otherwise, they wouldn't be standing on his neck. I don't know where you get this. Never is it okay to stand on a man's neck and cut off the breath of life. Never is it okay for a government to tell you you must wear a mask and cut off the breath of life. Genesis 2:7, all you Christians, says God formed man of the dust of the ground. And when he breathed the breath of life into his nostrils, that man became a living soul. The man, a noun, is now an adjective, a living soul. Not a noun that describes a person, place, or a thing, but an adjective that describes a character of reality, a character of being, a living soul. Not a dead soul, not a soul that has passed on, but a living soul. This is why the separation of church and state is so important, and the dangers of its erosion. The separation of church and state exists to prevent religious institutions from wielding coercive political power, and vice versa. It prevents religious organizations from providing overreaching spiritual intent. This is why it's so imperative to understand Hosea 4. It doesn't say, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And since you didn't go to church to learn that knowledge, I must deny you. It says, since you weren't a priest unto me, then I must deny you. It says nothing about the church. And a lot of people misunderstand this. Church as a place. Again, no, church is an adjective. It's the act of gathering. It is the character of gathering in a group. The state adopts a quasi-religious authority, in case you didn't realize it. That's the compulsory education. They demand your belief and loyalty to it, believing that the state can raise your children better than you can, that the state can teach your children better than you can, because you're just a dumb bitch-ass slave. You're just a fucking fool. And don't get it wrong, folks. I was a fucking fool, too. I, too, was a bitch-ass slave once. I, too, used to walk around with that ID in my pocket, being proud that I was going to be able to get a job if I ever lost my job, which I lost many. I lost many, again, because of authoritative policies that just didn't make sense. I was the worker that always excelled but never got promoted. That's why it's so important for people like myself to be self-employed, to express their own talents, because that's the only way we can make it. We don't bow down and become subservient to a false patriarch that demands that we do things that just are not logical, handing over our property to the state so it can control it and tell us how to regulate our own shit. I'm not going to do it. The religion becomes a tool of state violence, offering divine justification for domination. Welcome back, Dean.
Yeah, apologies. I got a dumb phone that whenever I get a call and it was an important family call, it plays at the same time that your recording plays, and I just can't do both at the same time. You know what I mean? It's just too much. Anyway, sorry, I had to go for that. But anyway,
no problem. No problem.
I'll just listen till we get. Let me listen in for a bit till I get caught up.
You bet. Well, first I'm going to take a look and say hello to everybody. I got Joseph R down in chat. Says just don't get deported before you get paid, bro. Hanko Flamio says, El Pero, I consider bureaucracy a powerful weapon. It is the Bureau of Vital Statistics, the enumeration of birth, which creates the state's vital statistics jurisdiction in which the estate record is created. And that's all we want to do is correct that record, because we entered into it in error and we should never have done so. We've got Master Carpenter. Russ down there says, greetings all. And we got Kayla says, howdy. You're so right. She also says, I learned more about the Bible from you than anyone. I appreciate that, Kyla. Again, you know, I'm very studied in the Christian scriptures because I was, in fact, brought up and raised. I was born Roman Catholic and then in the foster homes and stuff, subjected to various different sects of the Christian religion. And then when I was adopted, they were Methodists, so it continued on. And then when I was 15, I decided I quit the church because that wasn't, you know, what I was getting out of the scriptures. The scriptures was telling me to study myself, to study to shew myself approved unto God. And so I needed to go beyond the church, that church, to study, because what they were doing, I could see, was indoctrinating me. I could see it. So I quit the church, but I didn't stop the scriptures. Okay. I stopped being that Christian. I started understanding the morals and ethics, particularly being a Boy Scout at the same time. A scout is honest, trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. It sticks in my heart. And it doesn't matter whether it comes from scripture or a Boy Scout book. And this is why I say, you know, you got to keep doing your research. See, when I ended up in prison, I researched the law, but I didn't go to the law library to research it. I grabbed that Bible because I knew that's inherently where the law comes from. So as I continue on, when we realize the false patriarch merges church and state, and the citizens are taught to equate obedience with virtue, dissent with sin, that's the indoctrination. It's what I was talking about earlier. When we see the police arresting our friends, family, and neighbors, we think that they must have sinned. Otherwise, the police wouldn't be after them. And that is inherently the false presumption. We have to get away from that and start going back to our hearts. The population is spiritually manipulated. And if we don't get back to that spirituality, this country that was founded on such great expanse of freedoms is doing nothing but choking the spirituality of those freedoms right out of you. The atrocity against one's own families, those deemed traitors, heretics, unfaithful, they're rationalized. And that's because of the separation, the duality, the politics and everything. You know, you have a lot of families you see today that are split on the politics. You think they're not split on religions? You think they're not split on educations? Everything we do, we're split in ideologies, in disagreement with their own brothers and families. And instead of using that as a tool of conversation to come to a reality that is exact and objective, we use it as a mechanism to divide and separate and call each other names and be hateful. And it's all done under a totalitarian control, not only over your actions, but your beliefs and your conscience. Like I said, when a society gets so dumbed down that they don't even use their conscience to think about the morals and ethics of what they're doing, then we become an indoctrinated society of Hitler's willing executioners that are just doing our job. We have no real feelings about whether what we're doing is moral and ethical. All we're doing is following what the government says we are allowed to do. The government says we're allowed to do it. It's totally opposite than what the commandments tell us we can't do. That's part of the indoctrination, is people think it's a positive thing when a government tells you what you can do. You can do this, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And they do it through regulations of things that they say you can't do. Everybody runs to that false patriarch. Decade after decade after decade, knowing that history repeats itself, and yet they don't give a fucking rat's ass about it, and they aren't willing to do their research to see how it repeats itself, to see what the foundational problem is. They just blame it on somebody else. Well, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Listen, folks, like I said, I was a fucking fool. I too was a bitch-ass slave. But I came to one day realizing that I came from a lineage of fucking bitch-ass slaves. Tired of it. Earlier, we discussed how public education systems can be co-opted into promoting conformity, obedience, and state-centric ideology. And when these systems suppress critical thinking, promote nationalistic or religious dogma, reward compliance, and penalize dissent, they prepare the ground for the kind of desensitization Goldhagen describes. And that's exactly what we got. The schoolroom becomes the first battleground for the soul. And that is why that's where you find the bullying. The bullying starts in the school, and it grows with each one of us. So that when we get our first job and we go to that job and we start getting along with certain employees, but not others, we tend to get in those circles of bullying rather than promoting and supporting and helping each other with that job and filling in for each other. We place that hatred tag in there and say, oh, I don't like you for that. Instead of being able to deal with the things that make us uncomfortable, we try to discredit them and get them out of our circle. That's not growth for us, and it's not growth for the whole. The schoolroom becomes the first battleground for the soul, people. That's why I urge you to take responsibility of training up your child in the ways of the Lord first. This is why it's crucial to understand everyday systems such as the education, media, religion that shape our collective morality. We have to understand we're being molded into the central morality of a decentralized government that wants us to do what it wants us to do. And we go along willingly, thinking it's comfort and convenience because they're going to protect us. Listen, folks, the government is not going to be there when that robber enters your house and points a gun at you. The police are not going to be there. The protection is only a matter of after the fact. It is never prevention. And until you understand that, you will never stand up for your Second Amendment right, nor will you even express your First Amendment right. You will just keep kowtowing as a bitch-ass slave to the false patriarch, calling them and saying, hey, this guy's talking about you. Fuck you. You ain't my daddy. Been saying a long time, haven't I, Dean?
Sorry, what was that?
I've been saying
You've been
fuck
saying they're
you,
not your daddy a long time? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have. But I
Here's
like
what
it. I
one.
mean, that's kind of people. There are some people that want me to just, accept that I'm a slave, and it's like, I'd accept it if they just put it in writing. But the writing says everything else but that. The writing talks about how free we are and how we have all these rights and stuff. Make it make sense. That's all I want.
Yeah,
I'm your
exactly, and that
slave, put it in writing.
and that's like this. The complicity of the citizens to enable genocide. That's like today's modern time. We have all these people screaming about Ukraine and all this other shit going around the world, Palestine, Hamas, and all that. Are those our peers? Are those really our peers? Are those really our problems? Are they the problems that they're presenting, or is there something else? Are we being manipulated still? I mean, it is
Of course
media,
we
right?
are. Of course we're being
Exactly.
manipulated. How
Exactly. That's part of it. That's one of the largest parts, like I explained the other day. If you think the government doesn't own the media, there's something wrong with you. Go ahead, Dean.
how could my freedom and liberties possibly have anything to do with people on the other side of the world that I've never met, never seen, and as far as I can tell, have absolutely no bearing on my life?
Yeah. The only reason it would have bearing on my life is if I actually got on a plane and went there, or if somebody from there got on a plane, came here, and sat down and discussed it with each other. Otherwise, all I'm getting is secondhand information from third-hand people reporting it as a matter of hype so they can get a paycheck. And they've got governments all around the world supporting it.
Well, anymore, these people that are saying that are the ones that have consistently lied in so many other ways. I mean, not to beat the same drum that everybody's probably getting tired of hearing, but that whole Epstein thing, if that ain't some proof it ain't justice for everybody, I don't know what is, because they're
Well,
gonna
yeah,
throw that stuff out.
yeah, and if that isn't proof that you really shouldn't be voting, because that's what you're voting for, is people that will do that. And they'll get involved in scandals. And understand, Epstein was caught and indicted under Trump, and then he was caught and put in jail under Trump again, and now he's suppressing files under Trump. So if Trump doesn't really have so much to do with it and he's not really worried about it, then why doesn't he let him fly? If he thinks he's trying to show that it's not a conspiracy by hiding it, it's proving that there is most likely something in there that we want to see. But again, is that really any of our fucking business? Do we really need to worry about child trafficking? Yeah. But I'm telling you that you don't need to worry about voting in a president that won't allow it. You need to stop allowing it yourself. You're the ones that are sending your children to these schools, people. You're the ones that are allowing your children to be indoctrinated in the same fucking sheeple attitude. Sheeple, bitch ass slaves. That's all we're doing. That's what those schools are designed to produce. Another brick in the wall. So societies slide towards these authoritarianisms, not in sudden leaps, but in the gradual accepted compromises. You have a republic if you can keep it. And now we have an authoritarian government, not a republic. That's for damn sure. We lost the republic. We have to stand together and rebuild it. And we can, to throw off the despotic authoritarian government. We must. And so in the end, again, and I've oops.
I would suggest the republic hasn't gone away. It just needs to be reclaimed by each and every one of us, basically.
Correct. It's still there. But what we have is a authoritarian government that is in place until the people stand up again. And so I've got this book, Hitler's Willing Executioners, Ordinary Germans and the Holocaust by Daniel Jonah Goldhagen that I've read twice. This is just the cover. I've already given away 2 editions. The last one I gave away at a city council meeting I went to. So I'm waiting to receive my 3rd copy again so I can read it a 3rd time, because it's a very interesting book when it comes down to the stats and the police state and the indoctrination of the people. And I'm telling you, folks, that's what we have today here in America, is a police state that is running the exact same regime as German Nazi did. The exact same thing. And they're doing it the exact same way decades prior to the institution of an authoritarian government like the Nazi Germany. And they're doing it through the hospitals, education, CPS, every program, agency, and office of the government is involved. And it's only when you take back your powers, your responsibilities, your duties to your very own children will it ever be thrown off. Only then will the government understand that the people mean business, because they're not going to give them business anymore, because that's all it is. It's a corporate entity. And when you stop buying into that corporate entity, it can no longer survive. You have to quit feeding it. It is the supply and demand chain, except you think they're supplying you, when in fact you are supplying it. Okay? So think about this stuff, folks, and know that when it comes down to this Hitler's willing executioners, I stand firm on what I observe. America is slowly turning into Hitler's willing executioners. And it's done through the false patriarch that uses this process to maintain authoritarian control by destroying the bonds of trust, empathy, and moral clarity. And if you don't stand up and start teaching your children in the ways of the Lord, the morals and ethics of a true man at heart, owing no man anything but to love one another, then you are destroying your own children. Just like my parents damn near destroyed me. Every last one of them. My biological parents, the adoptive parents, the foster care parents, not a one of them stood up and told me my true authority of God. Not a one. They had some false preacher at a cubicle, at a pulpit, doing the same thing to me that he did to them. Teaching us to pay tribute to the false patriarch so that we go to church Sunday and put those Federal Reserve notes in that tray. So don't tell me there's a separation of church and state when the church has to register under a 501c3 charity organization, non-profitable, in order to be recognized by that government. See, I don't care to be recognized by the government. Fuck you, you ain't my daddy. I don't understand why the churches don't do that, but instead they're the ones that bow down and say, okay, we'll pay tribute to the false patriarch under a paperwork system. And that's the erosion of separation between church and state. It magnifies the control by moralizing obedience and sanctifying violence. See, it's the church that believes that the brother is a sinner just because the cop arrested him. They don't bother questioning the reality of it. They say, well, the state has certain statutes that you have to follow. I don't see any of those statutes in the scripture. Not a one of them. I think they're all false interpretations or misinterpretations of what is truly set in my heart. And that is, I'm a prophet unto the nations. I don't need your ID. I don't need your ID to be known. I'll be known if God wants me to be known. If not, oh well, fuck you. You still ain't my daddy. And that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow night is, did the forefathers of America ever discuss or place limits for sizes of communities to prevent these certain downfalls of a supposed centralized government that would take over for everybody? What do you think, Dean?
Did they what now?
Did our forefathers place limits for sizes of communities?
Oh,
to
of course
prevent?
Nothing like that.
Well, we're going to talk about it tomorrow night. because that's the problem. When we get into communities that are so large that we can't protect ourselves, that we become dependent upon a police force, that we become dependent upon watchers to keep an eye on our brother, because we refuse to keep an eye on our brother ourselves, which means we refuse to bring our own children up in the ways of the Lord. We're giving up all those responsibilities and duties that are written in those Christian scriptures. All you Christians out there.
Well, yeah, you're touching on something I'm starting to see as well, because I've been in some of these really small towns, and I see the corruption on a very close personal level with people that we've come to know there in these small towns. And I see that that's what happens no matter where you go. It starts out small, and the bigger and the bigger and the bigger the town or the city or whatever they end up calling it gets, the more out of control it gets, the less you can do anything about it. It's that old adage they love to throw in your face: you can't fight City Hall. And the bigger the city, the harder the fight.
Yeah, and see, the corruption happens even in the small towns. I lived in a small town in Nebraska called Stanton, Nebraska. There was a population of 630 people in this little bitty town. And I got busted with marijuana one time because one of the sheriffs, somebody told on me. I had a worker in my office, and he knew I smoked. And he's actually a good friend of mine, and he ended up telling on me. Got upset, emotional, and told on me. And one of the sheriff's deputies showed up at my door one day and said, "Listen, this is the deal. We're going to arrest your girlfriend along with you for possession if you don't just tell us where it's at." Now, the same thing's going to happen in a big city as what just happened in that little city. The difference is that when I gave him the quote marijuana that I possessed, he took off, never came back, probably smoked it himself, except for a month later, he come into my office and applied for a job because he lost his job as the sheriff. You suppose I hired him?
Well, that's what I'm. Yeah, that's part of the problem as well. You know, they got these high courts saying that these police officers don't have to be smart, they don't have to know much, they have the most limited training of anybody, and yet once one of these dummies takes an interest in you, your life is a whole different direction now.
Yeah,
Trying to fight this nonsense.
Yeah, it's in danger. When these people get involved in your life, it's dangerous. They think we're a danger to their democracy. They're a danger to our lives. Fuck your democracy.
I got a relative that got pulled over in Ohio, and they pulled guns on him. Him and his daughter, his 10-year-old daughter, pulled guns on him, and then they're slapping him with endangering his child because they pulled guns on him. It's like, you people are fucking insane.
Well, yeah, that's like the guy I explained earlier. He went out and expressed his First and Second Amendment rights, walking around bearing arms and using a video cam to record it, and the police confronted him about it. The incident went fine, except for the fact that the police called CPS to have him go do a home check because he was out enforcing his First and Second Amendment rights. And somehow that's a danger to his child. They have a concern.
Well, that's their system. You know that. I knew that because I knew somebody close to me that adopted some children and ultimately ended up, they were fostering them for many years, and they also ended up adopting them. But the point was, as part of the foster program, they couldn't have any guns in the house. It's like, well, that's ridiculous. How are you supposed to protect that child?
Exactly.
Somebody comes into your house.
Exactly.
It's crazy. That's the system.
Yeah, and that's the falsity and the fatality of believing that the state can protect you when they say you can't protect the children that we're putting in custody. You can't protect them. We have to. And we have to do it from the long arm, from thousands of miles away. You can't have a gun in your possession because that might be dangerous to the children. Excuse me? That's the very thing that should be used to protect the children. And you're denying that? That just does not seem right to me, people. You have to learn to start standing up and taking your responsibility.
And that's coming from trustees that are supposed to uphold those rules. It's even worse.
Well, yeah, they're the ones that think that since they're a trustee and they're working for the state and they're sucking the state's dick, they don't have a gun. Why should you need a gun? That's their mentality. Excuse me, that's not the reason that we're fighting this. I don't need a gun at this point either. I've never had to use one, but the ability to have it there in case it does happen is the thing that prevents the cost of my life. If it saves my life, hell yes, I will bear arms. Just because you think it might save one life if we do away with the right to bear arms, I think you've been misguided, Mrs. Cupcake. So anyway, that brings us to
don't work that way.
Yeah, that brings us to the end of today's discussion. And like I said, we'll be talking about the government, the forefathers, and whether they set some kind of limitation on the size of communities, because that's truly where it comes down to, is what I'm getting at, along with the education, is that when you have these big societies that provide so many convenience and comforts, people are so willing to falsely and blindly follow them. Whereas if you have your smaller organization, your smaller communities, and you empower those and leave the power in those smaller communities and don't centralize the government, that power will remain in the community, because the people will understand that power. They will have their certain firsthand experience in that knowledge and power by providing those responsibilities themselves and not giving them up to a government. What do you think, Dean?
That sounds good. I wish more people would get on board with the idea, but maybe they are slowly. COVID, I think, woke up a lot of people, and I don't know. I got other people that are pressing me like nobody's business about whether or not I'm going to accept the mark that they think is coming. Well, whatever. I don't worry about the future.
Yeah, that's that real ID, and a lot of people don't understand. The real ID, folks, is for federal employees and contractors. No one else. You better start learning how to read and point out the fact that when the state comes in and says you got to have an ID, you got to have the real ID that is playing that you are a federal employee or contractor. That's the resident, federal, state, or municipal officer or agent whose resident presence is deemed necessary by the board. If that isn't done, you can't just presume it, assume it, and volunteer it, because then you would be lying. You better know what you're saying when you do those things. So I want to thank Dean for coming up again. Another a lion in the house of Judah, knows how to speak, doesn't have any qualms about it. I appreciate you, Dean. You want to say goodbye to the people, and we'll hopefully see you again tomorrow night?
Yeah, I'll do my best. I like getting on your videos when I can, brother. So I do it when I can, but I got others. I got kind of a life going on too. So
I know. I always appreciate you coming up.
You, man.
You bet. We'll be back tomorrow night at 5 p.m. And so
I love you too, man. Even if you don't love me, like you say.
Absolutely, love you, brother. And you guys know me. I love you, but I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back. That's to say, I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you don't respect me. That part's on you. So may your God bless you and have a good night. We'll see you again tomorrow, hopefully. Bye now.